Hello, Internet. It is I, Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Recaps. So, May 2025, how was it? Well, by itself, the month was mixed. Like, there were some hits, but there were also some misses too. But at the same time, it was infinitely better than what happened last May because last May, oof, that month sucked, dude. It was bad. Like even like the best performing movies that month, they just did okay, really. Like they did fine. But fine just isn't good enough, especially when every other movie that month is just a straight out bomb. So, yeah, last May was a bit of a horror show. This May though was different because we actually had a big money hit come out in May. I'm pretty sure you all know what that movie is. So like that made up like all the difference, compared to like last year. And yeah, now we get to talk about May. So as usual, I'm gonna be comparing my own personal predictions to what actually happened. And yeah, let's get started. So May 2nd. I know the big movie was Thunderbolts. We gotta talk about the smaller movies first because they come first. First, we got Rosario. I predicted an opening weekend of like I think 500K to a million. No, maybe less than 500K, and a final total of like a million. It doesn't matter. No one saw it anyway. Ended up opening like 500K. Its legs were predictably non-existent. It disappeared after week one, and only made like 860K. Nothing really to say. I mean, the movie just kind of released. No one watched it, and that was the end of the story. Same thing happened with The Surfer. At least that did like a little better. I predicted an opening weekend of like I think a million and found total like 2 to 3 million. Turns out that was too optimistic. Only opened with like 698K, and his legs were just not there. Only made like 1.3 million, which obviously isn't good. But this is Nicolas Cage. He has so many like you know, low grossing movies under his track record. Like one more won't hurt him. Plus, he has Spider Noir next year, so he'll be fine. So, yeah. But now we get to the main movie of May 2nd, Thunderbolts, Asterisk. Should I even call it Thunderbolts anymore? Because it got like, you probably know about its new name, the new Avengers. But I called it Thunderbolts. The title is Thunderbolts, so I'm going to keep calling it Thunderbolts. So Thunderbolts Asterisk, the latest MCU flick. Here's the thing: when this movie was like first announced, I didn't give a shit about it at all. I was just like, ugh, whatever, who cares? But then I saw trailers for it, and I was like, you know what? Maybe this movie could be something. But I was still like, I don't know. But then I heard stuff about it. I heard people saying, "Oh, this movie was really good," and I was like, okay, this Marvel might actually have something here. Then I watched it and I was like, yep, Marvel absolutely has something here. This movie was really good. Definitely a huge step up compared to Brave New World, I'll tell you that. With this movie, Florence Pugh's character, Yelena, and then you got Bob, aka Sentry, like those two characters, they were like the heart and soul of the movie. They made me feel, they made me give a damn. And that's like the least a movie could do. And it was able to do it. And I liked the camaraderie between like the characters. I kind of liked how the movie's like climax wasn't just like your typical like big Marvel climax. It was more like a personal story. It was less grand scale and more just like down to earth comparatively, and I liked that. And the ending was real crazy. I was legit like when big spoiler alert, but this is related to like the name change of the movie, where the Thunderbolts, about to go after Julia Louis Dreyfus's character, and she's like, "Hello, actually, you know what?" She had like a grand announcement. She was like, "All right, people, here's the new Avengers," and people were just like, "Huh?" I was like that too, and then it led to a big post-credit scene where it shows all the Fantastic Four, from like their world have come into like the main like Earth 616 world that was where most of the MCU events happen. And I'm just like, great, we actually have an end credit scene that really matters. Because other MCU credit scenes have either just been gags or just like things that may not even lead to anything. So yeah, it's nice to have like a post credit scene that excites me for once. It's not like Brave New World. Well, that post credit scene just left me just like confused and just because it was just so vague, like hella vague. At least this movie is telling me, okay, this is gonna lead to something else, and I like that. And I just generally like the movie, and I'm really, after like all the mistakes that were made in Phase 4 and 5, like I'm glad Marvel has started to like understand these mistakes and learn from these mistakes and stop making so many goddamn movies and focus less on quantity and a bit more on quality, because obviously quantity resulted in just a lot of just poor movies, poor looking movies, and just it's just bad product. At least with this, I feel like I'm a lot more confident. I feel like this is like a good first step to what could be like a better Marvel. Unfortunately, its box office doesn't really reflect that. Um, so I predicted an opening weekend of like 75 to 80 million and a final total of like 180 to 200 million. Well, it opened with 74.3 million, so I was close. And it ended up making 188 million domestically. So I was right when I said this movie would have a longer, would have a bit of a longer life compared to Brave New World, had better legs, but it ended up making less than that movie. So as you can see here, its legs were pretty decent, but it didn't really it didn't really change the story. That the movie ended up being a bit of a flop. And especially when its budget's like 180 million, and it apparently needed like 425 to break even, and it didn't hit that. So yeah, real disappointing because the movie was actually really good. I feel like it deserved better than this, but I guess I guess it's just like the long term damage done thanks to phases 4 and 5, and the damage those phases resulted in this movie not doing as well as it should have. But you know what? With the quality of this movie, maybe that might make people want to watch other MCU movies. Maybe it could help Fantastic Four first steps a little bit, because people are actually fairly excited about that movie because it's the first Fantastic Four movie had like in 10 years. It's the first MCU anything with Fantastic Four. People wanted that for so long. So yeah, I feel like that movie will do better than this and Brave New World. But I was hoping for more for Thunderbolts box office wise. I really was, but at least I'm hoping from like a quality perspective, like they learned something from this, and they don't look at the box office numbers and to be like, you know what, we should just go back to just mid Marvel stuff. Just so yeah, I'm hoping they don't learn like the wrong lessons here. But yeah, that was May 2nd. May 9th, complete waste of time. Nothing happened that weekend. You have all these movies, but none of them made anything. So, like, there's really no point even talking about them, but I made videos on them, so I have to talk about them. So, let's do that real quick. Clown in a Cornfield. I predicted an opening weekend of like 3 to 3 million, I think, and a final total of like 6 to 7 million. Well, almost 3.6 million, made 7 million total, so I was right on the money. Yeah, predictably had a short life in theaters. Considering the movie, I don't, I think this movie cost like low single digits. I could be wrong, but if that is the case, then I guess it did fine, but didn't exactly set the world on fire though. So yeah, but it did way better than the other movies that came out May 9th. Next up, we got Fight or Flight. I predicted an opening weekend of like 2 to 3 million. Final total like 5 million, I think, 5 to 6 million. Opened with two. It completely disappeared after the opening weekend, and only made like 3.5 million. So yeah, yeah, not so yeah, just real nothing burger. This whole weekend was just a nothing burger. We're going to continue with that with Juliet and Romeo, where I predicted an opening weekend of like, I think it was like less than 500K and less than a million. And boy, it sure did that. Almost 289K. And it's, as you can see here, disappeared after week one and only made like 456K. So yeah, not surprising at all. And then we got Shadow Force, which did a whole lot worse than the other movies when you look at its budget. 40 million, and it made like up of 2 million, made like 3.9 million. Like, oof, that's a big yikes. My predictions weren't a whole lot better. I predicted like 2 million, 2 to 3 million. I found told like I think it was like 5 million maybe. So it didn't even hit that. Couldn't even hit 5 million. Like, how embarrassing is that? Considering it was like a wide release. And I knew this movie was just doomed to fail. I mean, look at this. Look at this. This does not look like a movie that you should spend money on, like in the theater. This looks like some random action movie you'd find while scrolling through the action movie genre on Prime Video. Not even Netflix. Prime Video. I mean, it looks just like that G20 movie that came out on Prime Video. Like, looks like that. So, why would people pay money to watch this on the big screen? Like, come on. And the fact that I heard this movie was described as adult Spy Kids, I was like, yeah, this movie's gonna fail. So, yeah. Yeah, May 9th was a complete waste of a weekend. It was a weekend to just sleep in and just do anything else. So, yeah. But now we move on to May 16th. Things get a whole lot more interesting because I get to talk about Final Destination Bloodlines. The movie I was excited about. Of all the May movies, I was hyped for this one the most because I love Final Destination. I've seen the previous 5 movies. I've enjoyed all of them. So I'm a big fan. So knowing about Final Destination 6, yeah, I was there. I was locked in. I was there opening like Thursday night. I watched it and I had a great time. A really good time because like the opening premonition, that was amazing. And just the death and all the deaths in the movie because because death just has to be the biggest prick ever. All the deaths, they were brutal, they were just nasty. Like, this movie gave me exactly what I wanted and more. And it helps that this movie was actually, felt like it had more, there's more to it compared to the other movies because in this movie, it works a little differently compared to the others. So, the whole gist of these movies is that main character is living their life, having a normal day, and all of a sudden, disaster strikes. Big accident happens, bunch of people die, and right when the main character dies, they wake up and realize, they saw a premonition, a vision of the immediate future. And so naturally they freak out and that the accident still happens, but they end up saving the people who were meant to die on said accident. It was the important people who were meant to die. And so Death, not being very happy about that, decides to hunt down those survivors and kill them in very elaborate, very convoluted ways. That's how all these movies work. And this movie's a little different because the premonition happens a good 40, 50 years ago before we had before the main character even exist. So the main character's grandma, saves a bunch of people, but then eventually Death decides to just go after her family, particularly her bloodline. So if you're like a bloodline relative or if you're in the bloodline, you're fucked. If you're not, you're safe. So the fact that it's more Death is going straight towards the family this time instead of a bunch of friends and strangers, gives the movie a bit more stakes. So I like that. Anywho, enough me talking about the movie. So opening weekend, I predicted 40 to 45 million because, and the thing is, I wasn't sure how this movie was going to do for a long time because this is like a 14-year gap between this and the last one. The last one didn't do too hot, at least in the States. So yeah, I was like, I don't know. I'm excited, but is everybody else excited though? Turns out quite a few people were excited because it's opened with 51.6 million. I was like, okay, hell yeah, good job. Its legs have been all right for what it is. It's now made 130 million domestically, 271 million worldwide on a budget of 50 million. Really strong. And compared to the other movies, I mean, it's not even close. It really isn't. Look at this. Like the Bloodlines made more in 3 days than the fifth movie made total. I mean, how often do you see that with franchises, especially after like such a large gap of time between said entries? Like that's not normal. And so yeah, just compared to the other movies, it just crushed them all. So yeah, I'm glad it did well. I really enjoyed it, and seems like Warner Brothers, after a really rough start to the year, they've they've been like on a bit of a hot streak with Minecraft and Sinners. Now this, like they're doing really good. I'm not sure if F1 will do that great, but they got Superman coming up, and I feel like that movie has a decent shot at being the big movie of the summer. But that's it's a kind of a 50-50 chance there. But yeah, Warner Brothers, they're doing quite all right now. So yeah, I know they're happy about that. So that was Final Destination Bloodlines. Now for the polar opposite of success. Hurry up tomorrow. Ooh, so this right here is basically a vanity project from The Weeknd, and it was actually a companion piece to his album, which came out like earlier this year. And here's the thing: when I first saw the trailer for this movie, I thought it looked kind of interesting. I was like, okay, maybe this could be kind of good. But I feel like that was editing, like tricking me into thinking it was way better than it really was. Because but eventually I found out about the movie. I learned things. I read some reviews, and I was like, okay, I need to stay far away from that. I mean, for a little bit, the score was like a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I was seeing like reviews giving it zeros. I was like, damn, it's really that bad. So yeah, I ended up not watching it, and it turns out no one else did either because I thought this movie would open with maybe 10 million, like maybe like more like 5 to 10 million, but probably closer to the double digits. um, but then I saw its weekend projections. I was like, oh god, okay, this movie's going down the drain. So I ended up predicting like 3 million. I think three. Yeah, around 3 million opening weekend. I found told like 6 to 7 million, maybe 7 to 10, and it opened with 3.3 million. But wait till you see how it did like opening weekend, like day to day performance, because it's fucking crazy. Okay, so this preview number, this is like multiple days of previews, by the way, it was added to its Friday number, and it ended up it didn't, and Friday didn't contribute a whole lot. Usually, historically, the way I view it is that the Friday number should be at least 3 times bigger than the Thursday number. But that's how it should work. But here it was barely bigger than its preview, so that was just a big old omen right there. And look at this Saturday drop off, 75%. This movie lost 3/4 of business the next day. That is crazy. Not Joker 2 didn't have a drop off like that. That was only like what 45%. Yeah, seeing a 75% drop off day to day is just insane to me. As you can expect, this resulted in a catastrophic second weekend, 79% drop, basically the same as Joker 2. And yeah, it disappeared right after that, and only made 5.2 million on a budget of 15 million. So yeah, absolutely embarrassing. At this point, The Weeknd, dude should just quit the acting gig. It is not working out. I mean, The Idol, you remember The Idol, right? The HBO show. That was a disaster. And now this is a disaster. Yeah, dude should just stick to his strengths and just sing and not act. Because from what I've never seen clips of him acting, but from what I've heard, it is awful. He is just he can't act to save his life. And doesn't help, this movie was basically just a big old vanity project for him, basically like ego stroking. So yeah, it's just this whole movie was a yikes. And I imagine people will talk about this movie at the end of the year when they talk about the worst movies of 2025. I have no doubt that's going to be on a lot of people's list. So yeah, big oof right here. And I gotta wait for it to like go back to the previous screen. Okay, so that was May 16th. Now the big weekend of May, Memorial Day. This is when May hit its highest high because Memorial Day weekend ended up being the biggest ever, like on record. It was the polar opposite of last year. Last Memorial Day was a horror show. I mean, I had Furiosa just bombing hard out there and almost losing to the Garfield movie, which that movie didn't do bad, but it didn't help anything. Like it didn't like it did okay for itself, but for the market, it didn't help it. Didn't help at all. And yeah, just it was just horrific. This year though, it was big, and that was mainly because of one Lilo and Stitch, as you can tell by its box office. But we'll talk about that in a little bit later because I got to talk about two smaller movies first before we get to that. First, I got to talk about Friendship. I predicted an opening weekend of like 2 to 3 million for the 3 day, 3 to 4 for the 4 day, and then I think 10 million total. And well, it hit 5.2 million for the 3 days, so I was, very much wrong there. And its 4 day ended up being like, trying to do like the math here, yeah, a little over 6 million. So very much wrong. And ended up making 15 million, so exceeded my expectations. But I thought this movie would have a bit of a longer life. I was expecting this to be like a sleeper hit, and that didn't. And I thought it was like judging by the guy's like trajectory, but they didn't really materialize. Which I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it didn't do like terrible or anything, but I thought this movie would like do a little bit better. But yeah, again, it didn't do terrible for A24 standards. This isn't like the worst. But you don't gotta. But at least A24 with Materialist, I feel like they actually do have like their big, you know, counter programming, sleeper hit in the form of that, because that movie opened pretty darn well for them, their third biggest opening ever. So they got that, to look at and be like positive about. Well, with this, it just did meh. I can't see this having like a cult following, maybe later on, but yeah, I thought this movie would do like just a wee bit better, but it did okay, ish. Then we got Last Rodeo, which from Angel Studios, and here's the thing: I don't understand the logic of Angel Studios. I don't get why they think it's a good idea to release one of their movies on the same weekend of much, much, much bigger movies. You're just asking to get overshadowed. Like this happened last year, last November, when Glicked, Wicked and Gladiator 2 came out. With behind those two movies, you had like Bonhoeffer, a movie no one gave a good goddamn about, and as a result, because of Wicked and Glicked, and Gladiator 2, no one watched it. And the same thing more or less happened here. Because this movie made the not so smart decision to open the same weekend as Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. So Angel Studios, I don't get the logic. I don't get their mentality at all. But anywho, So opening weekend, I predicted basically the same numbers as Friendship. So 2 to 3 million 3 day, 3 to 4 for 4 day, and its final total like 10 million or less. And while it opened with like 5.4 million for 3 day and almost 7 million, 6.9 million for 4 day, its legs have been meh, and it's only made like 14 million, which is at this point pretty on par with like their other movies. Actually, apparently it's their fifth best performing movie. Let me see. Yeah, yeah. As you can see, most of their movies had like the same range. I mean, you have like two outliers in the form of Sound of Freedom and King of Kings. Every other movie has been 20 mil or less. So yeah, Last Rodeo did not change that at all. But I guess it could have been worse, but it didn't set the world on fire either. So yeah. Okay, on to the big movie of May. The big movie of possibly the entire summer. I'm of course talking about live action Lilo and Stitch. Okay, so this movie's story is, kind of interesting because this movie was never meant to be theatrical. No, you think it was, but it's not. It wasn't. It was meant to be a Disney Plus movie. That was the plan for the longest time until last year, where they decided to make it a theatrical release and then give it its May release date. Similar to how, well, not quite similar, but similar how Moana 2, that was meant to be a Disney Plus show, but then they decided to just rework it to be a movie and give it a theatrical release. So they're taking Disney Plus projects and putting them on the big screen. It's basically the polar opposite of what was happening during COVID, where they took like movies that were meant to be on the big screen and then dumped them on Disney Plus. Here, it's the opposite. And boy, this strategy is working out amazing. I mean, Moana 2 did incredible back in November. That made $1 billion. And with Lilo and Stitch, okay, so opening weekend, like a month so before it came out, I thought it would open with like maybe 60 million, maybe 50 million. Then I saw actual tracking numbers come in saying like 100 plus million, like 130. I was like, what in the hell is going on? Are people really that excited about this movie? Turns out, yes, they were very much that excited. And when I saw the movie, yes, I did watch this movie. I thought about it. I contemplated on watching it for the longest time, but I decided to just do it. And what was really funny is that right before I made like the big decision, a little bit after, I don't know, right before I was like going to the movie, I saw like the car in front of me, and when I was driving, there was a freaking Stitch plushie just looking at me. So the universe was basically telling me to go watch the movie. That's what I think. So yeah, I did watch the movie. I went to see it. Quality wise, I did not like it. Not at all. Compared to, ooh, it is such a big, enormous step down from the original. I mean, God, like the original movie had, I'm not going to say edge, but it had more sass to it. Like it had more, characters were willing to be a little more mean, a little more vicious towards each other. And the movie just had like a better sense of humor and a better story, better everything. Here, it just felt a lot more sanitized and just like safe, and I did not vibe with that at all. Especially didn't vibe how they did, handle Jumba and his character. It basically made him the villain. They didn't want to bring in like the other, I forgot his name. I know people like him from OG Lilo and Stitch. Gunthu. I don't know how to say his name, but a massive alien dude. You probably know what he looks like. They cut him out of the movie, and I was like, "What the fuck? Why would you do that? Like, why?" And yeah, this movie, I didn't like it. I think it's just this is an example of like a bad Disney remake, but quality didn't matter at all, not even a little, because okay, well, my predictions were 130 to 140. No, I think it was 140 to 150 3 day, 170, 180, 4 day, and then final total like 400, 500 mil. This opened to 146 million domestically. That's literally bigger than what the original Lilo and Stitch made domestically, like total. Like that I'm dead serious. And yeah, made 182 million points. Yeah, 182 million of for the 4 day weekend. This is the biggest result ever for Memorial Day. Yes, it broke the record. It broke Top Gun Maverick's record. And you know what the funny thing is? Yo, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, a 2007 movie, that held the record for 15 years. Disney had that record for so long and felt like no movie was going to overtake it. But then Top Gun Maverick comes in, Tom Cruise comes in and takes the record. And then 3 years later, Disney takes it again. With thanks to Stitch over here. Well, there's no picture of Stitch, but basically thanks to Stitch. So, yeah, and what's hilarious is that, this weekend with Memorial Day, you have like Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible going head to head. This isn't even the first time this has happened with Stitch and Tom Cruise. They fought in 2002 with OG Lilo and Stitch and Minority Report. And in that battle, opening weekend wise, Minority Report won, but Lilo and Stitch became way more iconic in the end. And now here in 2025, Lilo and Stitch just whooped Tom Cruise's ass. Straight up. So yeah, Stitch has Tom Cruise's number constantly. So yeah, I find that to be a very amusing real world like movie gag. Because it feels like a gag at this point. But anywho. Yeah, so had a spectacular opening. Its legs have been okay-ish. It's now made 366 million. It will no doubt go past 400 million. I'm not sure if it will surpass Minecraft, the Minecraft movie. How? Okay. I need to see where that is. You know what? Where is it rank? 2020. Oh, God damn it. How much did Minecraft make? 423? I think Lilo and Stitch I think Lilo and Stitch has enough gas in the tank to overtake that. I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think it can do it. It might. I mean, you got the summer weekdays in its favor now, so it might. Well, who knows? But yeah, so far, Lilo and Stitch, it's looking like this will be the big movie of the summer. The only movie that has a shot of beating it is Superman. And even then, that's not a surefire thing. So, and considering this movie only costs like 100 million, I mean, look at Worldwide total 800 mil. I mean, Disney's just swimming in profit with this thing. Like they're probably thinking whoever made the ultimate decision to make a theatrical release, they're feeling like a genius right now. So, Disney, they're rolling in the money with this, and going to the theater to just seeing. Well, okay, this wasn't okay. Losing my train of thought. When I went to see this movie, hell, when I went to see like other movies, I noticed how people were coming in with Stitch merch, like Stitch shirts, pants, whole onesies. Some people bringing plushes, and I'm like, damn, people are taking this so seriously. But I guess that's the power of the brand. I mean, Stitch is one of Disney's most marketable characters, which is the most ironic thing ever, considering how in the universe he's seen as like such an ugly little thing, but in the real world, you can put his face on anything and it will sell. So yeah, so Lilo and Stitch, massive, massive hit. Not super surprised, but also kind of surprised at the same time. And yeah. And now we move on to Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. So, Mission Impossible 8. This movie's been a long time coming, mainly because of COVID and strikes. Pushed the movie back for years. I remember talking about Mission Impossible 7 and 8 like ad nauseum when I made my canceled series. I felt like those movies were never going to come out, but then they did. Well, 7, Dead Reckoning came out like 2023, and then strikes pushed this back to 2025, but finally out, which I'm very thankful for. But anywho, yeah. So with this movie, in terms of how I thought it was gonna do, I mean, there were like positives and negatives. Positives being this movie didn't have to deal with a Barbenheimer level threat. Like that wasn't gonna be an issue. But the negatives that Dead Reckoning, because of said Barbenheimer threat, that underperformed, and making a sequel to an underperforming movie generally isn't a smart idea. So it didn't help the movie. This movie's budget was monstrous. The official number I think is like between 300 and 400 million. But yeah, a number like that is just fucking disgusting. Like I understand if this was like an Avatar movie because you can see the money on the big screen, but it's like for Mission Impossible, like ugh. I mean, I know strikes and COVID and whatnot cause production to like cost to like shoot up, but yeah, that budget is a killer. I was like, this movie needs to be a phenomenon, otherwise it's never gonna break even. So yeah, I had like like positive and negatives when it came to like predicting this movie. So opening weekend, I predicted 60 to 70 million for the 3 day, and I think 70 to 80 million for the 4 day. Final total of like around 200 mil. It hit 64 million for the 3 day, biggest ever for Mission Impossible, by the way, and 79 million for the 4 day. So I was right on the money. Its legs have been okay. It's now made 166 million domestically, which means it will absolutely shoot past Dead Reckoning domestically. But overall, it's made like 500 million, which by itself that doesn't seem bad, but compared to its budget, it's really bad. So yeah, I'm gonna have to call this movie a miss. And I did watch it. I watched Lilo and Stitch before I watched this. So yeah, I did watch this movie, and it was good, but some of the action was like hella impressive. Like the whole submarine scene, that shit was like legit, like low key nerve wracking because that is like if you're claustrophobic, that scene is your worst nightmare. And yeah, but I feel like the movie, like all the spectacle was like kind of a detriment to like the plot and characters. I feel like the movie is more about spectacle and everything than anything else, and I think that resulted in the movie just being good, not great. So yeah, they didn't really stick the landing the way I was hoping they would, but it was still a decent enough flick. It was way too long though, from like a runtime perspective, from a runtime standpoint. But it wasn't bad. It was still a solid flick. But yeah, for Mission Impossible, it's not exactly the type of box office I bet Paramount was expecting. I know they were expecting a lot more out of this, but movie theaters, they're not going to complain. They're not going to say shit because this movie is giving them money. So as long as it gives them money, they don't care. So yeah, I compared this like to what happened with Gladiator 2, where box office wise, you look at just the numbers like in isolation, it doesn't look too bad, but compared to its budget, it is bad. So yeah, but still gave movie theaters quite a bit of cash, so that's the important thing. And at least it wasn't a big old embarrassment like Furiosa was last year, so it's got that going for it. Yeah, that was Memorial Day. The high point of the whole year so far. Although I feel like this might actually be the biggest weekend of 2025. But again, who knows? Things could change. Things could get real crazy over the next like 6 months. And then we move on to post Memorial Day weekend, May 30th. Last year there was nothing, like literally nothing. Like Hollywood just gave up. They didn't even try. This year we actually had movies, and that made a big difference because it helped the box office compared to like last year even more. But now we get to talk about the two movies that came out. First we have Bring Her Back. This movie was the follow up to Talk to Me, a movie that did really well back in the summer 2023. You know, a movie that kind of came out of nowhere and ended up doing like really well. And so this being like the follow up movie, I was very excited about it. I saw the trailer for it. It's very unnerving. And I was like, yep, this is the movie for me. A good old A24 horror flick. And I watched it, and my god, this movie is fucking evil. Like, holy shit. Like, I knew this movie was gonna have some bad vibes. I didn't expect the vibes to be what they were though. Like, Sally Hawkins' main character, her, she might be the most evil character I've seen in a movie in quite some time because she does some just inhuman shit. Just how like she treats like the kids she brings in, how she gaslights the kids constantly, and you know some of the stuff in the movie, like just how there's one scene in the movie that will forever haunt me because it would just mm, just thinking about it is bringing back bad memories. And there was like they made a poster for this too, just to feel like they just did that just out of spite against me. You know, but you've probably seen a poster of this movie where there's like a cantaloupe on a knife. That's the scene that I'm talking about, where like one of the kids, you know, you have like this kid. I forgot his name. Oliver. You know, Oliver. A kid with really weird vibes going on, and so is it Andy? Yeah, Andy is giving like Oliver like a piece of, a cantaloupe, give him some fruit on a knife. You think the kid would just take the fruit off the knife and then eat the fruit. No, the kid decides to eat the knife, not even like the knife being sideways, no, like straight up. So that knife is going through his teeth, his gums. I was just screaming internally on the inside the whole time, wincing the whole time. My audience was wincing with me at that. It was just nightmare fuel. And then like, that was like the big thing that fucked me up. And then there's like the other part where you think like, everything's gonna be all right. Like Andy, finds out, this Sally Hawk's character is just terrible, just an evil woman. So he brings like this social worker or whatever, like, visit, and then the social worker's like, oh damn, you're evil, we gotta go. And they try to escape. And then like Sally Hawkins' character just runs them over with a car, and I was just like, damn. My audience was like in shock at that. Because it was so sudden. So yeah, that was great. But yeah, I really like Bring Her Back. Like, it is definitely the most fucked up movie I've seen like all year. I'm not. I still think Sinners is superior in terms of like a lot of aspects. That's still my number one movie. But Bring Her Back, it's up there. It's probably in my top five. So yeah, really like the movie. Anywho, back to box office. So I predicted an opening weekend of like 7 million, found till like 20 to 25 million. And the movie ended up opening with 7 million exactly. Exactly. Its legs have been, it's down by like 17 million. His budget was like 17 million. So, oh, disappointing. I wanted this to do better. I thought it would do better. But it just didn't really pop up. It didn't really click with a lot of people the same way, Talk to Me did. So that's real upsetting. But I feel like this movie will have like a big old cult following, later on. So it's got that going for it. But yeah, so Bring Her Back, it didn't do great. And neither did, Karate Kid Legends. I didn't do great either. So let's talk about that. So Karate Kid Legends. This movie is weird. It's it merges the universes of the OG Karate Kid / Cobra Kai, merges that with the 2010 remake. You think those two movies are like in separate worlds, right? That's what you think, but this movie said nope, same world. So I was like, oh, okay then. And so my opening weekend, okay, before it released, I thought this movie would open like in the 30s, like maybe 30, maybe 40s, something like that. Then I saw like its tracking numbers and they were going down. I was like, oh no. And then I saw its weekend projections. I was like, oh god. So I predicted only 20 million opening weekend and a final total of like 50 to 60 million. It hit 20. So I was right on the money. And its legs so far have been like okay, but it will very much reach that 50 to 60 million total, but this is not what I thought was going to happen at all. Like, I mean, compared to like this to like the 2010 remake, like it is so much worse. Let me show you. Just to really emphasize that. Look at that. I mean, 176 versus 44. I mean, that talk about a drop off. Like, oof. So, like, what happened here? What caused this? I think maybe I think Cobra Kai may have done more damage to this movie than I thought. Because, with Cobra Kai, that lasted like 6 seasons, lasted several years. So I imagine people are just like, I got Karate Kid at home. I got all these seasons of Cobra Kai. Why do I need to go to the theater and watch more Karate Kid? I feel that may have been like the mindset a lot of people had, which resulted in the movie just not doing very well. So, yeah. So, yeah, a bit. Well, so I wouldn't call it a flop, or at least not a big flop. I mean, it only cost like 45 mil, but yeah, definitely a big disappointment, no doubt about that. So yeah, it's still a miss in my book. So yeah, yeah, definitely a miss. And that was May. So yeah, there were technically a lot of misses, but like Lilo and Stitch, and to a lesser extent Final Destination Bloodlines, I think made up for a lot of the misses and resulted in the month just being overall healthy box office wise. Now we're currently in June. I can tell you how it's going so far. The first weekend, oh, not good. Ballerina's a bomb at this rate, which is kind of shocking considering it's like a John Wick movie. It's the John Wick brand, but looking at it closer, like it's starting to make sense why this is happening. Still a solid flick. Didn't deserve this though. And then this weekend, things are finally like back on track in terms of box office because How to Train a Dragon had a really good opening weekend, as did Materialist. And I'm just like, okay, we stumbled a little bit, but summer box office is back. We're back to the good times. And then like this upcoming weekend, 28 years later, I feel like that movie might pop off. I have this feeling that it's going to do really well. Elio, though, I think that's going to be a miss. I don't see that doing great. And then at the end of June, you have F1 and Megan 2.0. Megan 2.0 will be a bigger hit, mainly because this budget is much smaller than F1's. But F1, I've been hearing people are thinking maybe it could be a surprise, blockbuster. But I don't know. We'll see. How June's looking right now. So yeah. Anywho, yeah, that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. You want to check out more videos like this? I got playlists on the homepage, all previous recap videos I made this year, the past few years. You want to watch any of them, go right ahead. There's also box office predictions where I predict box office for movies. Every movie I covered in May, I made a prediction video for. So you want to watch those videos, go right ahead. Or any other prediction videos I made this year or any other years, you can go right ahead. And there's also the canceled series where I went over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. It's 250 episodes. So if you want to binge watch that whole series from beginning to end, I highly suggest you do that. So go do it. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.